The US Senate has approved Leo Bozell as the new ambassador to South Africa. He was nominated by President Donald Trump in March. That's when South Africa's then ambassador to the US Ebrahim Rasool was sent home. For more on this, we're joined now by international correspondent Simon. Mark, Simon, good to have you once again to give us some clarity on this. A key Trump ally, we are told, a conservative, one who's really been vocal about South Africa's alignment to Russia, China and Iran, promising earlier on that if he got into this position, that's one of the areas that he would address. Are you surprised by this name coming up?
Well, I'm not surprised by the outcome of this vote, Tubbo. I think it was an absolute inevitability once the Senate Foreign Relations Committee advanced Brent Bozell's nomination to be Donald Trump's representative in South Africa. And in the full Senate, he's been confirmed along party lines, 53-43, 10-seat majority, 10-vote majority for him. And that gives him the approval that he needs to now travel to Pretoria and head up the American embassy in South Africa. Brent Bozell, and by the way, he goes by Brent, even though his given name is Leo. He is referred to in the United States ubiquitously as Brent Bozell. Brent Bozell is a very prominent supporter of President Donald Trump. And I think it's fair to say that in many ways, he was a kind of a Make America Great Again voice in the United States, even before Americans had heard the phrase Make America Great Again. He's been a pivotal figure in Washington dating back many, many years. He rose to fame by creating a media monitoring organization that was a very early adopter of the argument that the mainstream media in the United States tilted to the left. That was his view, and that he and his funders said was a major problem with the American cultural landscape. And he has, of course, proven himself to be a very loyal supporter of President Trump's agenda. That's one reason why he has been selected to head to Pretoria to helm the South African embassy. And as we learnt during his confirmation hearings, he's absolutely backing the American president's determination to keep America's doors open only to white Afrikaner refugees, while America's doors are essentially closed to everyone else. And he's also criticized South Africa, he argues, for getting much too close to China, criticized South Africa's moves at the ICJ, of course, to advance efforts to hold Benjamin Netanyahu accountable for war crimes in Gaza, and has more broadly adopted and embraced President Donald Trump's critique of South Africa that ultimately saw the United States boycotting the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg just a few weeks ago, and now sees South Africa itself shut out of the G20 Sherpas meeting that took place in Washington just a few days ago. So I think Brent Bozell is going to become definitely a forceful character on the stage in Pretoria, and the South African government is going to have to decide how exactly to deal with him. He is not a shrinking violet. He is not someone who is going to be hiding his light under a bushel. He is going to be speaking out forcefully on behalf of President Donald Trump when he gets to South Africa, because that is who he is and that is what he does.
Described as a staunch media critic, what's his relationship with the media like in the United States, and what is it likely going to be with the South African media?
Well, I think in many ways, Brent Bozell is the architect of America's shifting media culture. I mean, when he first set up his media monitoring organization, you know, Fox News was still a glint only in Rupert Murdoch's eye. Now it's the dominant TV news channel in the United States. And of course, it is also surrounded by numerous other pro-Trump streaming networks, TV channels, and online outfits that relentlessly promote and parrot the Trump administration's line, and indeed now many of them have representation in the press briefing room at the White House, as the Trump administration has proved to try and sort of eclipse what they refer to as the legacy media, the mainstream media, by which they essentially mean media houses that don't support openly President Donald Trump's agenda. So in many ways, it was the work that Brent Bozel did in his early years politically in Washington, D.C. that gave rise to the sense among conservative right-wingers that not only would it help them in the battle against Democrats to win elections if they had a more vocal media that was hewing to their own ideological and philosophical agenda, but also that it could help change the culture of American society. And in both ways, I think it's absolutely demonstrable that what has taken place over the course of the last 15 to 20 to 25 years in the United States has been precisely that kind of series of moves that Brent Bozel was one of the early adopters to promote. As far as the South African media is concerned, I think he's going to be keeping a very, very close eye on everything that is written about the US relationship with South Africa, everything that is talked about on the airwaves, and I suspect that he will himself also be speaking out pretty regularly to the South African media in an attempt to amplify Donald Trump's editorial and ideological voice on South African shores.
Largely partisan in his work, although he is known to participate now and again in some bipartisan initiatives like monitoring elections and so on and so forth. In other words, he does sometimes tend to work with the Democrats, but does he listen to their voice? Is he one who listens to a voice of reason at some point?
Well, I think there are some issues on which even Donald Trump's Republican supporters can find common cause with Democrats, and we still see that occasionally on Capitol Hill. And remember, the Republican Party is not monolithic. I mean, if you look at what's taking place in Washington at the moment, there are Republicans who are deeply concerned about Donald Trump's plans in Venezuela and skeptical about precisely why President Trump is threatening to take the action that he's threatening to take against President Nicolas Maduro. But I think that most observers in Washington would argue that Brent Bozel is primarily an ideologue. He absolutely is cut from conservative cloth in the United States, a constitutional originalist who believes that every single word of the American Constitution should be taken literally, and someone who, for the most part, aligns himself with President Trump's agenda. You know, all Donald Trump supporters find themselves from time to time facing questions about some of the president's most egregious excesses, but, you know, draw a Venn diagram between Donald Trump and Brent Bozel, and in very large measure they align. And that, of course, is exactly why he's been chosen by President Trump to head to South Africa at a time, of course, of enormous complexity in the bilateral relationship. The bilateral relationship has never been at a lower ebb. Even during the apartheid era, we never saw anything approximating what we've witnessed over the course of the last 11 months since Donald Trump returned to power. And going into Donald Trump's second full year back in the White House, I think Brent Bozel is going to become a very influential and powerful figure. And someone that the South African government is going to have to find a way of coming to terms with, and occasionally, and perhaps more than occasionally, forcefully pushing back against some of the things that he says.
Disinformation, I suppose, is one of the issues that South Africa has been battling with around the relationships with the United States, particularly this one of a white genocide. I mean, we've got the latest issue now, which is around the manhandling, apparently, of US officials, which South Africa has denied. I mean, these are some of the issues that South Africa is trying very hard to clear and put the real story out there. Is Brent Bozel the guy who would help us in that, or is he even interested in helping us in that?
I mean, there was no suggestion at his confirmation hearings that he was particularly interested in helping the South African government in any way. I do wonder, however, Thabo, whether, you know, once even the most hard-bitten critic of South Africa gets to South Africa, and particularly once if they are really given the chance and if they grab the chance to go and engage in their own fact-finding, and they travel, of course, to rural areas, but of course travel around the country more broadly and make their own independent, open-minded assessment of the situation in South Africa. You know, what are they going to do when they have to say to the White House, actually, some of the claims that you're making don't stand up to reality on the ground in South Africa? Now, I don't know whether Brent Bozel is going to avail himself of all the opportunities that exist for him personally to go and talk to people and dig into issues and understand South Africa in all its multicultural nuance. I don't know if he's going to do that, but the only way you can do it is, of course, to be on South African soil. And much as, you know, one can wonder about his own future in South Africa, I also keep wondering about what would have happened if President Trump himself had come to Johannesburg, to Nasrec, for the G20. Would he in any way have changed his mind over some of the disinformation that he's absolutely embraced over the last several months? I mean, it's unknowable. It's a sort of a counterfactual. But Brent Bozel will at least have the opportunity, and I'm sure the South African government would encourage him to avail himself of that opportunity to go and try and draw his own conclusions.
Simon Marks, appreciate your time. Our international correspondent there, Simon Marks, the United States Senate, confirming Brent Bozel coming to South Africa. He will be the ambassador to South Africa.